JavaScript is notorious for having lots of callbacks, or even when using promises, having lots of thens and catches. It makes code very difficult to read. But by using async and await, we can make code much more legible. Let's mash on that. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Asp.Net Monsters. Today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about async and await, but not in C#, this time in JavaScript. So I have some code up here. It's the same code left and right. We'll modify it and see how much better it looks once we're done. So it's using a lot of promises. So this particular code talks to a Mongo database behind the scenes. And so we do a lot of things that return asynchronously because those requests go out over the network and do a bunch of stuff and then come back. So JavaScript, the way it handles that is it does things asynchronously. So JavaScript is an event loop. So as your program is running, it just continues to run and run and run, and you kind of subscribe events and things to that event loop. So if you have something that is very long running, like going out to a database, you don't want to halt the whole execution of the program while you wait for that particular request to finish. So instead what you do is you just kind of launch it in the background. You say, hey, when you're done, then put something in the event loop and we'll figure out where to go from there. So that's basically what's happening here. But as you can see, like there's a lot of layers to this code. Right, so down here, I don't know how many layers of indentation in we are, but it's quite a few. And the reason for that is a few things. There's a bunch of these thens in here, and then there's also a for each, which is not particularly problematic. I don't think it's as legible as like a for loop. And then another then down here. So let's see if we can break this up and make it a little bit more understandable. So the tool we're going to use is this thing called async and await. So those are async and await. All right, so there's two keywords. The first one, this async one, just tells JavaScript like, hey, what's coming back from this code is going to be a promise. So we decorate our function with that right up here. And that's the only place you're ever going to use the word async, is just to decorate functions that are going to contain any awaits inside of them. So let's see this first one here. So this first one, we're going to find all the fish, apparently, in this collection, and we're going to do something, a bunch of stuff with them. So what we can do is put a semicolon there to break this line up here, and I'm just going to call this fish. So we'll use fish equal to all of these fish here, but because this is asynchronous, it's returning a promise. So if we were to just do this, instead of getting like a list of fish, we would get a promise that returned a list of fish. So we can throw a wait in here, and that's going to turn the promise from being kind of just a promise object into the result of the promise. So if there was such a thing as like calling like a promise.result, then this would kind of do that for you behind the scenes. So now we have a collection of fish, which is super nice. And I've got the same documents open here, both sides. Let me just drag stuff over them as I can. Okay, good. So now we can actually see some comparison from what we did have to what we have now. All right, continuing on here. So right now in here, I've called then on data. So anything in here that contains data is actually going to be our collection of fish. So it seems like we're pretty lucky in that we're just counting them in this case. So we can remove this whole then lambda and off the bottom here too. So you can see there's a catch here. We'll leave that in place, and I'll show you how to deal with that a little bit here too. Okay, so we found all, and then this stuff ends up being really easy because it just exists within the basic level again, so you don't have to worry about being too nested. But we're doing a find all again here. So we had fish already here, and now we're doing a find all fish. So let's just call this something like const all fish. Might have to come back and revisit some of the naming in a little bit. And we'll tab that over again so it's indented correctly. Looks like I'm just one parenthesis shy of where I'm supposed to be, and that did not help at all. Okay, so now we have all fish. And that would have been called result before. So that appears in two places here. So let's just go here. Oh, more than two places here. So it appears in a couple places here. So we can rebind that as all fish. All fish, all fish, all fish, all fish. Okay. And we can get rid of that. Then off of that too. I actually missed an await here, so there we go. So let's re-indent that. Okay, so this stuff looks fine. I always like to end lines with semicolons, not strictly necessary, but cleans things up a little bit, I think. All right, so full fish is undefined, so we've got a for each in here too. And there is a customer, an index, and the array itself. So how can we make this a little bit cleaner? This is not asynchronous inside of this for each block, so this is going to be called sequentially. And we could just leave this like this. It's kind of a stylistic decision about whether this is easier to understand or not. I don't know. What do you think, Dave? Do you think
I always find it a bit hard to read.
Yeah. I think it probably depends maybe a little bit on your background. So this is a more functional approach than you would get with a for loop. Well, let's leave it like this for now. We can always circle back and clean it up. But I noticed there's another one down here where we're calling some asynchronous stuff here. So we're finding one customer. So we can do a const customer is equal to find one customer. And again, we can get rid of this. So this
Don't
looks...
forget your await there.
Yeah, yeah. Wait. So now I'm a little bit confused here because we had all fish in there.
Looks like maybe we were using result.
Yeah, it looks like we overbound that. So this should actually be customer. So that's another danger there. And probably if you were running this through this original code through a linter, it would have picked that up.
Yeah, it would have picked that up for sure.
Told you off for doing that, which would definitely be useful. Okay, so I replaced customer there, but I actually need to, so we're going to disappear this. Okay. Go customers, it's just this array here. Perfect. Customers length, use array. Okay, so then we're just going to set up some results here. Okay, this is looking pretty good so far. Let's re-indent everything here, make sure we're all good. Alright, so that for loop is fine. This else is for the fish. That's fine. Okay, so that just leaves us, I think, this catch block at the end that we need to deal with. So
there's just one thing on line 13.
Oh, what do you
Might
got?
be bound to the wrong variable.
Pages?
The data.count, I think, is fish.count.
Oh, you're right. I think that's correct. Yeah, because you can see this is not being used anywhere. So there we go. Perfect. All right. So yeah, that just leaves us this catch here. So the way that promises handle catches is you put a catch at the end and you do something with it. But the beauty of this one is that you can just use the standard try-catch mechanisms that exist within the system already. So you can just put try up here, and then close it off, and then just do the catch down here, just as if it was anything else. Pull in the error, and need that.
There you go.
And we go. All right, so let's take a look here and compare what we've got. All right, so we should be kind of close on the number of lines of code. Yeah, we're actually a little bit longer here just because of maybe some extra lines and some parentheses. But I think
Yeah, you get some extra parentheses with the try and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think this is a little bit easier to read, and we can even clean this up more if we take that for each. It doesn't have to be a lambda there. But this should just work exactly the same way, and it breaks up the promises so that they act in a more linear fashion, so that it's not as complicated, in my mind at least, to go through the code base and see how this stuff is done. So I like this approach a lot better. Async and await is supported by every major browser out there except Internet Explorer, but that's not a major browser anymore, thank goodness. So you don't have to worry about that.
Well, and if it is, like, unfortunately for some of us in enterprise, we do still have to support it when we have Windows 7 people. In that case, you can use something like Babel to compile this down to, it basically compiles it back to promises, I think.
Yeah, or TypeScript.
So there's still, TypeScript as well. So there's still a way to use it. You're not stuck if you do have to support IE 11.
Yeah, we should do an episode on why I don't think that Babel has a place anymore, and everyone should just use TypeScript. But that's a future episode. So I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover off on this topic.
I've been. I agree with you. It's a lot easier to read in a linear fashion now because you can kind of just read through it and see exactly the order that things will be called. And with the promises, and especially when you get into nested then methods, it gets really hairy pretty fast. But one thing I've been noticing with a lot of our code is that it seems like we're less likely to introduce bugs into our system when we're using async await versus promises, mainly just because, and I think I might see a potential bug here in the original version, in that the function isn't returning the promise, and that's something that often gets missed there. So in your original code, it's not returning the promise, which could throw off whatever's calling it, because it might return before it's done, and then things go out of scope, and your app just doesn't work the way you expect it to. So now that you've made the function async, it knows that it needs to, the caller knows that it's expecting a promise back there, and you're awaiting things, and it just kind of happens automatically, as opposed to having to remember all the places where you're supposed to return that promise to make sure that the callbacks get registered properly. Are you aware of any linting that warns you if you haven't properly awaited an async function?
I don't think so. I have never seen it warn me about that. So, but I mean,
that would
might make sense. It would be nice to have, for sure. Thanks everybody for joining us, and because we're on YouTube now, we have to say things like subscribe, which I wonder if it's the most commonly said word on YouTube.
Possible.
That would be cool. There's a good bit of research for somebody to do. Go download 10,000 YouTube videos, capture all the audio from them. They closed caption these things anyways. You can just grab the closed captions from videos and just see if the word subscribe is the most common one. Alright, anyway, you guys should subscribe and like and share, and I don't know what the other verbs are, but you should do all of those things, and we'll see you next episode.
Bye.